Hi everybody, long time no see. Welcome back to La La Land, and today I'm going to be talking to you about my first draft of my novella. So this is actually kind of a little crazy. I haven't finished my first draft, but I am in the completion stage, and so I kind of wanted to just document it a little because this is a bit of a milestone for me. I've been writing for years and I've never actually gotten to just a first draft finished. So this is really exciting. I just kind of wanted to talk a bit about me finishing my first draft and also talk about some of the struggles I had with writing my first draft. So my first draft is the book that I'm working on right now is a novella, which I've never worked really on a novella. I've always worked on novels and series. And so this was very much an experiment for me. And I think that's one of the reasons why I am being a bit more successful with it is because it's a bit more manageable. For me, whenever I'm trying to write, I'm always have these big book epic series in my mind, and I need to know everything and have everything figured out, and I need to know all the information, and it needs to be amazing and perfect. And this was just a very simple thing where I go, it's short, it's small, there's no strings attached to anything else, and I'm just gonna try it. And so I'm really glad that so far it's been working and it has been really good. And if you guys don't know, a novella is between a short story and a novel, usually between around 17,500 words and 40,000 words, whereas a novel is 40,000 words plus. And then when you get to like epic sci-fi and epic fantasy, those word counts can even go up. So it's a bit shorter than a regular novel, but it's still a book, so it's really exciting. The other component that is very different from most of my writing is I would say about 90% of my writing is some form of fantasy, whether it be urban fantasy, high fantasy, epic fantasy. It's some sort of fantasy, and then I do have other pieces in other genres, but this is really the only piece that is sci-fi. And so it has been just an experiment all around, and that has been one of the challenges I've also faced with writing this first draft is the fact that I haven't really written sci-fi before, and so it's been an experience. How this story and draft kind of came to be is I was taking 3 different writing courses, and I was learning all about stories, the structure, and I was learning about just writing. And then I took this, it was just a very brief, 8-week course on an introduction to sci-fi literature, because while I enjoy the sci-fi genre, I've noticed I don't read a lot of it. I enjoy watching a lot of movies in the genre, but really I feel like I'm always either very intimidated or I'm not interested in a lot of science fiction books. And so I really wanted to take this class to kind of give me a stepstone into the introduction. One of the assignments for the class was to write a short science fiction piece, it was only supposed to be a couple pages. However, in my writing class, I also had an assignment at the same time to write a short piece that was 20 pages. And so I was like, I'm gonna be smart and combine these, which I did. And I just sort of meshed together what I could. I actually think I came up with some pretty brilliant, not necessarily entirely original ideas, because as I've gone further into the sci-fi genre, I've been like, oh, this is actually really similar, but there are some things that are unique and I'm proud of. And I wrote, I think it was 9 pages maybe for the sci-fi assignment, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna finish this, and he was like, cool. And then I finished the 20 pages for my writing assignment. And this was when I realized this is the first struggle that I encountered. This story was originally supposed to be 20 pages. I was like, I'm going to keep it brief. I'm going to keep it short. It was not, in fact, 20 pages. And I was like, okay, I'm about halfway through what I have planned. So it's probably going to be about, in whole, 40, 50 pages. And so I was really excited with this, and I decided I'm going to stick with it, and I'm going to try to keep working on it, and I did. And I then was like, okay, let's see how many pages I have so far. And it was already in the 60 page. And I had already been like, okay, I need to go back and I need to restructure this and fix this. And I started to realize this is going to be a lot bigger story than I originally thought. So now I have tried to work it so that it is a novella. I'm trying to keep it a novella length. I think it will definitely be a novella. I don't think it'll go into novel length. I'm trying to keep it a novella length, but it's been a bit of a struggle. And because of that, that is one of the main issues I have encountered while writing my first draft. As someone who has been writing for many years, whether I was in the I'm just haven't written anything for a couple of months or years, or like I'm writing this and I'm writing this and I'm writing this. YouTube is an amazing place where you can just get so much information from so many successful authors. And I have watched many videos about how to write your first draft and what are the beginner mistakes. And I would definitely say when I look back on a lot of my older writing, or when I'm peer editing other people's writings, I'm able to see how far my writing has come and that I've been able to grow out a lot of those mistakes, but I am still very beginner to writing, and I made a lot of very newbie mistakes in my first draft, even though I knew not to make them. I knew it. I was like, this is a newbie mistake that I've seen 100 people talk about. And some of them were my fault, and some of them just couldn't be avoided. So the first one was structure, and I tried so hard to make sure that my structure was down, because I am not a plotter. I never really have been, but I have always been like, it would help so much. And so I really tried to get down a plot on this. And since I'd spent literally like a whole semester studying the hero's journey, I was like, this should be easy. Well, the issue is, since this was originally a short story and then I basically needed to elongate it, I had like, oh, the call of adventures here and meeting the mentors here. And I basically am like, now I'm going to have to like redo this. Maybe I'm going to have to move this scene here. Maybe I'm going to have to rewrite this scene. And it's been a little confusing, and it's not going to be pretty in editing. Let me tell you that. So even if you are a pantser or a gardener or whatever term you use, I would recommend just even putting down some bullet points before you fully immerse yourself, because I know it's going to be such a pain in the ass when I have to I've tried to restructure it as best as I can. I have my structure plot over there that I've been following, and I just know it's going to be hard. It's going to be confusing. It's going to move the story around, and it's not going to be great. And so that was one of my first struggles I went into, was just not having the best structure the first time around. And then when I came back and I was like, now I'm going to structure this, I ran into a lot of issues, and will no doubt continue to run into issues while editing. The second thing that is kind of different, and I'm always rather worried about, is the pacing, because novellas are different from novels in the fact that they're shorter. There's not as much time, there's not as much page length, things move faster, you just don't have as many pages. And I'm a yapper, I like words, And I'm used to novel length writing where I feel like I often ask myself, is this moving too fast? Is this too, do I need to figure out the pacing better? Is there too much of a lull here? Is this description moving, am I moving past this too quickly? And part of that is no doubt, yes, you need to slow it down. And the other part is probably the pacing is just different. It's also kind of hard because while there's like a ton of resources on how to write a novel, there's not as many on a novella. And while they're very similar, there are some distinctions that are kind of important and can make a difference. The other thing is, since I originally wrote the core points of this story while I was doing school, this was during a semester, coming back to it has been kind of difficult in getting back into the character's voice, because my character is I try to make all my characters have a very distinct voice, and I would say this character of all my characters has the most unique and distinct voice that I have written, and I'm trying very hard to keep that, but I've noticed it just hasn't been the same, or I don't feel like it's the same. And I know that's something in editing I'm going to have to go through, I'm going to have to comb, I'm going to have to make sure that it matches everything, everything matches. I'm going to have to add in a lot of things to make it the way I want them to sound. And that's kind of a hard thing where just like when you fall out of a character's voice anytime is going to be difficult, especially if this character is smarter than me. They have a lot of things that I don't. And so trying to put my headspace to think like them when I'm like, I'm not this intelligent, I don't think this way about these things, can be very difficult. And while doing all of that, while keeping the same language, keeping the same tone, it's just difficult. It's going to be a pain in my ass in editing. But it's something to keep in mind. And I've been trying to, reread passages of my core stories so that I can go back to it and be like, this is how they sound. The other thing, and probably the biggest thing that's gonna really, really be hard for me in editing, is the world. And it's always a really good idea to have a good grasp of your world if you are writing something in a different world that has different rules and different laws. And my story started out, again, this one was one that was just kind of unavoidable. It started out as 20 pages. It was supposed to be 20 pages, and then it was supposed to be 50 pages, and now I'm like, oh, it's supposed to be like almost 40,000 words. So originally my world, it didn't really matter. There was just a few things that you needed to know about it that were important to the story. And then I was like, okay, now I can add a little more detail. And now I'm to the point where it's like, I need to know a lot more. And to some degree, I do know a lot more things, but it's how do I fit this in such a short amount of space that I do have writing a novella. And again, I know someone's gonna be like, well, just write a novel. And it's like, I don't want to. I'm trying to I don't feel like my story would fit a novel. I feel like it fits a novella. And so this is something I'm really going to have to go through in editing, is making sure that, since it is sci-fi, I'm going to need to make sure you understand things, that I explain things, that I just don't suddenly mention something and it's never explained again, And especially since really this story has been created as I've been writing it, it's been made while editing and just growing and everything. Whereas usually when I write something, I've kind of been stewing on it for years, and I have a million different subplots and all this stuff, which is why I never get around to writing any of it. This has really been just created as I've been writing and growing with the story. And so this is going to be something that is definitely something I'm going to have to work on in editing, and it's going to drive me crazy. The last thing that has been a struggle is the fact that this is sci-fi, and I hadn't written really any sci-fi, and I hadn't read a lot of sci-fi, which means you always want to be familiar with what you are writing, whether that's so that you know the genre, you know the tropes, you know how to subvert expectations, you know the linguistics and the lingo and all of this stuff, which I don't know as well as I know fantasy. You ask me a random thing about fantasy and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a term that refers to this, blah, 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 and you can find it in these books. Sci-fi, not so much, especially with science fiction differs a lot more, where fantasy, you have kind of these groups and most of them share certain laws or rules or terminology, and you have that in sci-fi, but it's a lot more kind of each thing has its own individual how it works and what's happened and what's going on. And so trying to kind of piece together what I know, and also I'm gonna need to do more research. I've been reading a lot of science fiction over the past couple months. If you guys have any suggestions of your favorite science fiction books, please let me know, because as I've said, I am picky when it comes to science fiction. And so while I've found a lot of science fiction books I've been really enjoying, there's also when I scroll through, I'm like, I don't want to read this. So that's kind of all the struggles I've found with writing my first draft. Some of them weren't avoidable, some of them were. And yeah, I've made a lot of newbie mistakes. I know looking back on it, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to edit this so much. And on one hand, I'm like, editing, yay, I finished my first draft. But I always see authors and writers be like, no, editing is the hard part and it's the worst part. And I just want to live in my fantasy that editing is going to be okay for a little while longer. I have set like a schedule, due dates of when things are supposed to be done. My first draft should hopefully be finished in 11 days. We'll see if that works. I have about 4-ish, 7-ish scenes left to write, and then I'll have all my scenes. And then I'll just need to restructure everything and add in a lot of information and take out a lot of information and rewrite a lot of sections in the correct voice and tone and just a million different things that are probably going to drive me crazy. But yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to say I've written a first draft of something and getting to see how far this project has come. I've been trying to research, since I've never really gotten to the stage of editing, I've been trying to research a lot of like, how many drafts should you have? What types of things should you focus on first? Usually people say like structure and content before you go to, like spell check. And so I'm probably going to do a couple different waves of editing that I'll try to keep you guys updated with, because I am really pumped and excited that I am actually gonna do this. So yeah, that's kind of an update on where I've been. I'll maybe be making a video on me finishing up my first draft, but these are some of the struggles I had with writing my first draft that, even though I've been writing for years, I still made them. It just means it's going to be a little harder in editing. It's okay if you've made them too. We're human after all. Yeah, but I'm really excited and I'll be sure to keep you guys updated. So yeah, you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye. Oh, and subscribe, ring the bell. I haven't done this in so long, I'm actually forgetting. There's subscribe, there's ring the bell for notifications. Oh, there's like the video. Like the video, guys. And I'll keep you updated. See you next time in La La Land. Bye.